Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 13 of my Music Theory for Producers course. In the previous video, we took a look at how to create chord progressions and figure out all the chords in minor keys. One of the things that I mentioned at the end of that video was that because there are three forms of the minor scale, there's harmonic minor and melodic minor as well as natural minor, that there's actually three forms of chords that we can get from minor if we sort of put into effect the harmonic or melodic minor scale changes. So just as a recap, you may recall in a previous video, we talked about how in harmonic minor, you raise the seventh scale degree, the seventh note of the scale. So in A minor, the regular A natural minor scale would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And again, I'm just looking at the bottom note of each triad here. In harmonic minor, you would raise the seventh note up a half step. So instead of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, you'd end up with A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp A. So this G sharp A essentially raises the seventh scale degree up a half step, which puts the seventh scale degree one semitone or one half step away from the tonic note A. So what does this do? Well, it has a lot of implications for our chords as well as for the scale. For the scale, it creates what's called a leading tone. A leading tone is basically like the seventh scale degree resolving up to the tonic. It's a form of musical resolution, if you will. In major keys, the leading tone just naturally exists. If you take a look at like a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. B and C are the seventh and then the octave first scale degree. B to C is a half step, naturally a half step, and every single major scale has a leading tone built into it on the seventh scale degree. Natural minor does not. It has what's called a subtonic, but that word doesn't really mean much to us in this video series. It basically means that you have a seventh scale degree that's two semitones lower than the tonic. So when you alter the seventh scale degree, G up to G sharp in this case, you end up with something that's called a leading tone. So you're altering the natural minor scale to become a harmonic minor scale. Now, this has other implications for the chords as well. It doesn't just affect the scale, it affects the chords. So specifically, the three chords that have G's in them that get altered to G sharp in harmonic minor are the 3 chord, the 5 chord, and the 7 chord. None of the other chords in A minor have a G in them, so they basically come through completely unscathed, completely unchanged. So the 1, 2, 4, 6, and 1 chords are all identical in harmonic minor as they are in natural minor. So let's take a look at these. We said that the 3 chord in the last video, the 3 chord is a major chord. It's C, E, G, at least in A minor. C, E, G is a major chord. It's a C major chord. So when you raise that top note, the 5th, it's a G, up to G sharp, you get C, E, G sharp. And remember, a few videos back, we said that the difference between a major chord and an augmented chord is that the 5th has been raised up a half step. So now instead of C, E, G, we have C, E, G sharp. So C, E, G sounds like that. That's a major chord. Augmented C, E, G sharp sounds like that. So it's almost got this sort of surprised feeling to it. So that's the 3 augmented chord. It's the first altered chord in harmonic minor. If we go over to the 5 chord is naturally minor. It was E, G, B. If you raise the 3rd, the G up a half step from G to G sharp, now we have E, G sharp, B, which transforms that E minor chord now into an E major chord. So instead of a minor 5, we have a major 5. So here's E minor, here's E major, minor, major. So it's just the one note difference. Again, we talked about this a few videos ago, but the only difference between a major and a minor triad is the 3rd. You know, you can raise the 3rd in a minor triad and turn it into a major triad, and you can lower the 3rd in a major triad and turn it into a minor triad. The 7th chord is also affected. Whereas in the 3 chord, it was the 5th, and the 5 chord, it was the 3rd, and the 7 chord, it's actually the root that's affected. So GBD is a major chord. GBD is G major. When you raise the root up a half step, you end up with G sharp B D. So this becomes this, and that turns into a G sharp diminished triad. Now, you could call the diminished 7 chord a leading tone chord if you want, and you can also call the major 5 a dominant 5 chord. That's the one that's more important here. And when we were looking at our minor key chord map in the last video, I did point out that there was a diminished 7th along with a major 7 chord, because they actually are treated differently. They're treated differently depending on which one's used. You'll see that the major 7 chord gets a little bit more leeway with the 6 and the 3 chords, whereas the 7 chord, the diminished 7 chord, gets a little bit more work with the 2 and the 4 chord. So this, and also it can go back to 1. Well, so can the major 7 and go back to 1 as well, but it's just treated a little bit differently if it's diminished 7 as opposed to major 7. The other thing is that the 5 chord is basically treated the same way. It's just going to sound a little bit different. So that's why I put both the major 5 and the minor 5 in the same area. So one thing I want you guys to realize about all this altered chord stuff is that it should be noted that all 3 of these chords are optional. They're optional alterations of the minor key. They're not required. However, the major 5 chord is extremely common in minor key songs, even in popular music. Altering the minor 5 to become a major 5, just that one note difference, is extremely common. The 7 chord, the diminished 7 chord, is not as common in popular music, but in classical and concert music it is. And then the augmented 3 chord is, in popular music, it's extremely uncommon, but it does pop up in concert and classical music a bit. But I hate to say it, but the augmented 3 chord, you can almost forget in popular music. It's there. I want you to know that it's there. It exists, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to want to use unless you are intentionally going for that surprised feeling. So that's the augmented chord. That's pretty much all we're going to say about it. The 5 chord is extremely common in popular music. So let's come up with the chord progression. We'll use A minor just to keep it easy for now, but let's come up with the chord progression using our minor key chord map, and we'll actually use the major 5, and then we'll do one with the diminished 7. So one of the ones we did before was 1 4 5 1, but we did it that was one of the ones we did in major. Let's do 1 4. Let's do 1 4 2 5 1. 1 4 2 5 1. And I'll do it with the minor 5, and then I'll do it with the major 5, and you'll be able to pretty easily hear the difference. So since we're working in A minor, I don't think we need to build the scale up vertically like we did before, but you can do that, go through that same process like we did in the previous videos, where we built the scale up vertically and then chose the notes. You know, we'll do it anyway. Let's do it anyway. So A minor is all white keys. There's no sharps or flats. So let's start here on A2. Actually, let's go up an octave. There we go. Yeah, A2 is up an octave. There we go. And just for demonstration, I'll add a few more notes in A minor. There we go. So all white keys, essentially what I have is A minor stacked vertically. There we go. So the 1 chord would just be A, and like we did before, you skip the second note, skip up to the 3rd, skip a note. So ACE is A minor. It's the 1 chord. 4, 1 2 3 4 starts on D. So skip a note, skip a note. So D F A is the 4 chord. and then we'll do 2. The 2 chord starts on E. Skip, whoops, put it over here. We'll skip F, go up to D. Skip E, go up to F. And then the 5 chord starts on E. E, skip F, go up to G. Skip A, go up to B. And then we'll resolve with the tonic again. There we go. Okay. So let me just drag over that. Just loop that. And let's give that a listen. And you know what? We really only need to listen to these ones. We don't need to repeat that last note. So that's 1, 4, 2, 5, 1, but with the minor 5. So let's take all of our G's here and let's bump those up to G sharp, to harmonic minor. Again, just this is the same thing as raising the 7th scale degree up a half step. So let's do that. And let's see what the difference is. It feels like it's got a little bit more of a lift and a little bit more of a push on that 5 chord, now that we've altered it to major as opposed to minor. And it may not fit the song you're working with. If you want a more somber tone without that lift in it, you may stick with the minor 5 chord. It's up to you. This is where you get to make compositional choices. But using major or minor 5 can create a very noticeable tonal difference in your musical example. Let me actually play something on the piano here where I use minor 5 and then use major 5. All right, so let me play something that's got sort of like an arpeggiated feel to it, using these same chords, but not just stomped out like this in piano roll. Let me actually play something musical with these 4 chords. 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. And I'll sort of shout out the chords as I go. So here's 1. There's 4. 2. There's our minor 5. 4. There's our 2. Now here's major 5. So let's try this again. I'm gonna cut out the fluff. I'm just gonna play 1 minor 5, 1, 1 major 5, 1. 1. See if I can do it again without making a mistake. There's 1. Minor 5. Minor 5 again. So I'll do major 5 this time. There's major 5. Major 5 again. Minor 5. So do you hear how the major 5 has more of a pull back to 1 than minor 5 does? Minor 5 has a cool sound to it. It's more of like a somber feel to it, but the major 5 has like a pull to it, you know? Like a good example of like a strong 5. I mean, there's a million examples of it, but like Hotel California by the Eagles is a perfect example of a really strong 5 chord. You know, when you hear it, you can really, really hear the 5 chord and the pull back to the 1 chord. So that's why this is called the dominant 5 chord, or the dominant chord, is because it essentially pulls us back to the 1 chord. Major 5 back to 1 in a minor key, believe it or not, is the most common chord progression, even though major 5 is an altered chord. So just like I said before, I mean, 90% of music in minor keys uses this altered 5 chord. It's extremely common, way more common than using the minor 5 chord. So again, it's an example of an altered chord that is basically it's a regular thing to use. So let's try something with the 7 chord instead, diminished 7 chord. The diminished 7 chord tends to be used very much like the major 5 chord, and if you look at it, it's not. It's you can kind of see why. If you look at the major 5 chord, it's E, G sharp, B. The diminished 7 is G sharp, B, D. They share 2 of the same notes. They share the same B and the same G sharp, and then the D is sort of it's just an added tone as a 5th. These 2 notes, especially obviously the G sharp, really create that upward push. So if I play one major 5-1 and then one diminished 7-1, they sound very similar. So here's 1-5-1. And here's 1-7-1. They have a little bit different flavor to them, but they kind of have the same pull. They have that same leading tone pull. So they can almost be used synonymously. Like, let me try playing that same thing as I'd had before, 1-4-2-5-1, but instead of 5-1, I'm going to play 7-1. So I'll play it the regular way first just to establish it. Again, this is with the major 5 chord. 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. Let's try it again, but I'm going to substitute the 7 chord for the 5 chord. A little bit different, but kind of the same as well, kind of similar as well. So that's the 7th chord. The diminished leading tone chord. It can be used most commonly to move straight back to 1, and that's what the chart basically says. It's used basically to move straight back to 1, whereas the major 7 is used in rock and pop music a lot, but not to go back to 1. It can go back to 1, but it's used in a lot of other things. Like the major 7 chord can be used like, there's a million rock and roll songs that have this chord progression to it. It's basically 1, major 6, major 7, back to 1. You can't really do that with the diminished 7. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't have the same sort of sound to it, like the one that's popping in my head is Scorpions' No One Like You. Go listen to that one. It's got that very stereotypical rock 1-6-7-1 chord progression to it. Major 7 tends to be used more in popular music. Diminished 7 tends to be used more in classical and concert music. The major 5 chord and the minor 5 chord can be used, really either of them can be used. But major 5, the dominant 5, is very common in popular music as well, not just in classical music. Just for sake of demonstration, so you can hear an example, let me play something that goes 1, augmented 3, diminished 2, and then diminished 7, and then back to 1. Something real dissonant sounding. Something that you might hear in concert music, but not so much in popular music. I'll try to play that again and I'll yell out the chords. So 1, augmented 3, diminished 2, diminished 7, and back to 1. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was pretty similar. So something like that, you can use the augmented chord sort of to make the music a little more creepy or a little more suspenseful, but it's just not common in popular music. But I just want you to know that it is there. So that's how you can create these 3 altered chords just by sort of injecting a little harmonic minor flavor into your minor key songs. Most of the time, it's just going to be making your minor 5 major. Sometimes it may be making your major 7 diminished. Less often, like I said, it's going to be making your major 3 augmented 3, because major 3 chords are used very often in popular music. Augmenteds, like I said, are just very, very uncommon in both popular music and concert music. So anyway, so that's just how to inject a little bit of harmonic flavor into your minor songs. In the next video, we'll do the same thing with melodic minor, and things get even more strange. There will be three additional altered chords that we'll talk about, and we will ultimately end up with basically 7 main minor chords plus 6 additional altered chords for a total of 13. Well, actually, there's more. Well, I'm trying to think. There may be more than that, but it basically ends up being 7 main natural minor chords plus 6 altered chords that you can use in minor. So this is, again, why I said a few videos back that minor gets very, very interesting, but also very complicated. So, all right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.